Some Republicans with some Democratic help are trying to pass the anti-Semitic hate speech law. The Republicans are colluding with the far-left anti-American hate group, the Anti-Defamation League.
This bipartisan legislation will require social media companies to release detailed public reports of violations of their terms of service and to outline how they're addressing these violations, which includes the use of their platforms by terrorist groups. Every day companies fail to report this information, it will result in a $5 million fine. Social media companies can no longer hide the crimes that take place on their platforms, especially when they pose a threat to America's national security. And we're very proud this bill has the backing of the Anti-Defamation League.
The ADL is essentially a radical socialist front group. The Anti-Defamation League is actually more like the Defamation League. It has tried to deplatform countless conservatives for reasons that have nothing to do with alleged anti-Semitism. So if you think just because a radical group says it is about fighting anti-Semitism, that is what its mission is, you would be mistaken. The issue is not the issue. These activist groups are united around pushing the left's radical agenda, best advanced by the Democratic Party.
We work with Google on using AI to try to interrupt cyber hate before it happens. We work with YouTube to get them to change their algorithms. We work with Facebook on trying to use a redirect method.
Just to understand this, is this simply a research effort, or is the ultimate goal, I imagine, to effectively defund them, which is to say that PayPal would effectively turn off the spigot, or at least turn off the ability for them to fundraise using PayPal?
That's correct, Andrew.
I'm shaking with rage right now, guys. This is who the ADL is. Introduction. This is from their website. Introduction. In recent years, violent and alarming actions by far-right extremists, from seditious plots to interfere with election results to white supremacist mass-killing attacks, have thrust the issue of right-wing extremist violence into the headlines on a regular basis. In today's America, such terrorism is not merely a threat, it is a fact of life. Despite this, many questions remain about right-wing terrorism. How common is it in the United States? Which extremists commit such acts, and what shape do they take? To answer these questions, this report examines, analyzes 67 domestic terrorist plots and attacks by American right-wing extremists from the past 6 years. It highlights the violent effects of the surge of white supremacy that the U.S. experienced with the rise of the alt-right in the late 2010s, which brought into the white supremacist movement a new cadre of young, newly radicalized white males. It also illustrates the violent results of the spread of white supremacist acceleration, a belief system that openly promotes deadly attacks. Terrorist incidents are only one type of extremist violence, though obviously one of the most serious in terms of both casualties as well as impact. Right-wing extremists in the United States engage in a wide variety of murders and attempted murders, assaults, hate crimes, shootings, and standoffs, vandalism, street violence, threats, and incidents of harassment and intimidation that may not rise to the level of terrorism, but which nonetheless are significant and dangerous. But terror incidents show right-wing extremism at its most dangerous. One incident on the list is particularly complicated. The January 6, 2021 storming of the U.S. Capitol. Over 1,000 arrests have been made so far in connection with this event, including several sets of arrests of people charged with conspiracy or seditious conspiracy. These include involving the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and the other militia groups. For simplicity's sake, these serious cases are counted in the analysis as one combined incident rather than separate incidents.
I saw anti-Semitism for the first time when I was 15 years old. I had good parents who taught me it was wrong, but it left a lasting impression on seeing my first incident as a teenager.
Oh my God! You were insulted as a fucking teenager? Holy shit, call the FBI. We have to solve this unsolved case. This cold case. This antiseptic case.
And if you're on my social media, you see it every day from people that are responding back with what I consider clearly anti-Semitic kind of messages on social media. I even saw an article today, it was about me, but talking about we have to oppose congressmen who are pro-Zionists.
You sound exactly like a leftist, dude. Exactly. And those of you on the right, you want to support people like this?
Right? And you're like, in other words, it's all over our social media, and it's unacceptable. And when I saw the protests out here the last 2 days, they were vile. right? They were, you can see the anti-Semitism in their comments and how they were treating some of our members of Congress who are Jewish. I saw that firsthand. It's unacceptable. And so we want to be in a country that makes clear that anti-Semitism or any kind of racism is repugnant, unacceptable.
Acceptable to who, jackass? Acceptable to you?
Not allowed in my space, and with zero tolerance for it. And people should feel like that they're scorned for having these ideas and espousing these ideals. And we need to work with our social media companies to clean this up, because what is going on is wrong. And I think it's further influencing other more people that can be influenced by what they're saying that this is acceptable behavior. It is not. So we need to hold these companies accountable and work with them to take it off the airwaves. So
Take it off the fucking airwaves? Nah, fuck that shit. This bill is not gonna go through.
I'm glad to work with my good friend on this. I appreciate Mr. Greenblatt being here as well.
When you talk about globalists, another phrase used by right-wing extremists.
The ADL, our Center for Technology and Society, works actively with all the kind of companies of Silicon Valley, from Apple to Zoom, if you will, from Amazon to Microsoft to Meta, and indeed to Twitter. We've dealt with them for years, helping them tackle the challenges of hate speech on their service. We point things out, we share information. But what we've said again and again and again, and I've had the privilege of speaking directly to Elon a few times, the reason why we are so concerned is because we think Twitter is such a consequential service. And again, allowing people who created the toxicity on the platform that led to real world violence. Keep in mind that the conspiracy theories that dominated on Twitter for so long exploded in places like Pittsburgh, Poway, El Paso, and of course, ultimately in Washington, D.C. on January the 6th.
Which this slimeball and his slimeball organization calls a white supremacist attack. Yeah, that's who these Republicans are teaming up with.
So what I would say very clearly is that to you, as I've told Elon Musk, as I've told to others, we need these companies to engage constructively, smartly, use their innovation to tackle hate speech. I applaud Congressman Gottheimer, Congressman Bacon for reintroducing the Stop Hate Act. It's bipartisan, and it's launched not because they are Democrat or Republican, because they're patriots who understand what our country needs, to hold the tech companies accountable.
You get to determine what I'm allowed to watch? No, fuck that shit. And fuck you for expecting me to support that shit. Republicans, you should be ashamed of yourself. This is a disgusting betrayal of America first. We do not want this bill passed, guys. You know what? One thing I am not a sycophant. If my party or my leaders do something I do not agree with, I viciously oppose them. And I viciously oppose this measure. This is straight up legislation of hate speech. This is legislation of hate speech, guys. That's what this is. And this is the face and the expression of a man who is shocked, disgusted, and mystified as to how this subversive, anti-American organization somehow wormed its way back into the Republican Party. You know what? The right and the left, maybe this is something that we can actually coalesce on. Yeah, I just said it. I'm speaking blasphemy here, man. I'm talking about I would team up on the left to sink this legislation. This is something we might never even be able to recover from, guys. Another crappy law. Just so you know, the U.S. analog to the UK Online Safety Act is actually two bills. One is KOSA, but the other is the Screen Act. The ID verification BS is in the Screen Act. While the Screen Act's text does not directly require digital IDs, its proposed changes to Section 230 could encourage platforms to implement stricter identity verification systems to mitigate legal risks. If platforms are held more accountable for users' content, they might adopt digital ID checks to track users potentially eroding anonymity. This could chill free speech as individuals might self-censor due to increased surveillance risks.